Well, welcome to our annual town hall meetings. This is for us to go through our budgets and rates for next year, but when we get together, we like to talk about ongoing construction projects, some of our successes in the last year, as well as some customer service updates you might have available. My name is Andrew Burrows. I'm the Executive Director at the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. I would like to say last year I was unable to attend these meetings in person, so it's good being back in person rather than being a recording. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about what we do in the big picture. I mention often at these meetings and in other public meetings that we do a lot of very small things repetitively, and it ends up being a tremendous amount of work by the time you total it all together. We're going to talk about our ongoing construction projects. We'll talk about the budget and rates for next year. We'll give some customer service updates, and then we also have some upcoming projects that we would like to discuss. So in the big picture last year, this is for calendar year 24, we jetted and cleaned 42 miles of gravity sewer. You may see these trucks around. They have big tanks on the back. You may see us at a manhole, and there'll be a pipe coming from the truck into the manhole. What they're doing is cleaning the inside of a sewer line for any debris that has settled out during the conveyance process. So particularly at low flows in the middle of the night, velocities will slow down in the line and fine particles will settle out. A lot of it is sand that has gotten into the system. So we're cleaning all those lines out. Last year we cleaned 42 miles of gravity sewer. We also inspect the inside of the pipes on the sewer side with cameras so that we know what's going on. Otherwise, the only indication we would have of there being a problem would be either a backup or a sinkhole showing up. So we do the inspections on the inside via camera, and last year we inspected 28 miles of pipe. While we were doing that cleaning and inspection, we pulled out 255 tons of debris. All of that debris was then disposed of at a landfill. And then at the wastewater plants, we currently operate 3 wastewater treatment facilities throughout Glynn County. Here on St. Simon's is Dunbar Creek facility. The main one has Academy Creek, and Exit 29 has the Southport treatment plant. We pumped and treated 4.3 billion gallons of wastewater in calendar year 24. And while we were pumping and treating that 4.3 billion gallons, we pulled out a little over 3,000 tons of solids. And there's 2 ways that solids are removed at a wastewater plant: through physical screening and removal of solids. And then the main way they are removed is through the biological treatment process. The actual biomass will consume organic material while you're going through the process. On the water side, from our current 14 well facilities, we pumped 2.93 billion gallons of clean water last year. Now, if you're very astute when you're paying attention to that, 2.93 billion gallons of water is substantially less than 4.32 billion gallons of wastewater. So how can we generate more sewer than we can water? Well, the actual answer is you cannot. However, there are 2 reasons that number is higher. One reason is our largest customers at the Joint Water and Sewer Commission from a flow perspective on sewer are sewer-only customers. These are major industrial customers: King and Prince, Rich Products, the port. All of those have their own well facilities where they pull their water from, but we receive their sewer either at Academy Creek and the Rich Products and King and Prince, or at Exit 29 from the port. And also Sea Island does the same thing. They send their sewer flow to the Dunbar Creek plant even though they have their own wells. So those large customers, we only have sewer and not water. But the other reason is what's known as inflow and infiltration. This is groundwater and storm water that gets into our lines due to defects in the pipe, or not even defects. If you go to a cast iron manhole cover, there's little holes in the top of that so we can actually lift the manhole cover off. Well, as it rains and water ponds on top of that manhole cover, you end up with water dripping in, and over time it amounts to a substantial amount of water over a 365-day year. Our water distribution crews installed 354 new meters. These are at new construction or existing construction properties that did not previously have service with the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. Perhaps they had a private well on an existing home. So 354 meters, which is actually down about 200 meters from the year before. So drive around Glynn County, you'll see a lot of homes being built. So we installed 354 new meters. We work 24/7. We do have staff at the wastewater plant on the mainland 24/7, but the rest of our staff is on call, or someone is on call for the rest of our staff for problems that occur after hours. And we spent 5,200 hours responding to after-hours calls last year. That does not include the 2 hurricane responses that we had, so that number would be much higher when you include all of that as an after-hours expense. At our lobby at 1703 Gloucester, we do take payments there, and we take a lot of payments there. So we had almost 55,000 customers come pay their bill in the lobby in the past 12 months. So a little over 4,500 customers a month that came into our lobby. So throughout the year, we see quite a lot of our customers. A lot of our customers of that 4,500 a month are the exact same that come in every month and pay their bill, whether that's because that's the way they prefer to do their transactions, or they just enjoy chatting with our customer service staff while they're there. We appreciate them doing that. We also processed a little over 5,000 invoices. I throw that number in there because the less invoices we pay, the less money we're spending. So I keep trying to drive that number down, and thankfully it continues to go down. So a little over 5,000 invoices. Now, from my own perspective, I have been the director of the JWSC for 5 years now, 5 full calendar years. And so I wanted to take a look back on what we have done over the last 5 years, because perspective is something that often we miss when we're doing the same things day to day. So in the last 5 years, we have cleaned 328 miles of gravity sewer through that cleaning process. Now that is a significant number for us. Obviously 328 miles is a very long distance. However, that is more mileage than we have gravity sewer pipe in our systems. And what that indicates is we have cleaned the entire sewer system in the last 5 years, which is our goal. So a good job by our cleaning staff to go take care of that. Those line cleaning techs do a great job maintaining the cleaning. And on the gravity sewer televising and inspection side, we've done 177 miles of gravity sewer televising. And that also meets our goal, because our goal is to inspect the system once every 10 years. We clean once every 5, but inspect once every 10. So as long as we're more than halfway to our cleaning number on the inspection side, we're meeting that goal. While we were doing that, last 5 years pulled out 1,850 tons of debris. And I will say, just for a point of reference, 328 miles of gravity sewer, if you lay that end to end, would be the distance from Brunswick, Georgia to Montgomery, Alabama. So we've jetted across the state of Georgia in the past 5 years. And 177 miles will get you from Brunswick to Albany. So not all the way across the state, but pretty close. And then at the wastewater plants, last 5 years, 19 billion gallons of wastewater and 15,500 tons of solids taken out that were not returned to the waterways. Water side, just shy of 15 billion gallons of water. Again, sewer higher than water, as we talked about earlier. That happens every year. And over 2,500 new meters installed in the last 5 years. That's a little bit of a misnomer. There has been 2,500 new meters at new connections in the last 5 years, but actually in the last 5 years we've put in about 34,000 meters because we changed all of our existing meters out within the last 5 years. We spent 22,800 hours responding to after-hours calls. Our guys run wide open all the time, and that number, I talked about that 4,500 people a month number, that's pretty consistent because we've seen over 275,000 people in the lobby in the last 5 years. And then as an engineer, this number at the bottom is important to me. We have invested $92 million in capital projects in the last 5 years. As a point of reference, we were at about $25 million in the 5 years preceding 2020. And so let's talk about those construction projects, and this will not be $92 million worth of projects because thankfully in that $92 million we've completed a lot of projects. So these are recently completed or ongoing water projects. Sea Palms East here on St. Simon's Island, right after the completion of this town hall meeting last year, we kicked that project off and we got that knocked out in July. Canal Road and the Exit 29 WPF is water production facility. That is a well site that provides treatment capability to treat the water to drinking water standards prior to introducing it to the distribution network. So here's some photos of our Sea Palms East waterline rehab. This is the second entrance into Sea Palms, Palm Drive. So if you're coming up Frederica, when you get to the second entrance, you might have seen in late June, early July last year, we had pipe strung out along the shoulder of Palm Drive. So that was going in via open cut methodology. They're putting the new pipe in for water. And then this is actually the road cut that occurred in Frederica to cross Frederica Road. The water main is on the other side of Frederica Road, it needed to be upsized to increase flows and pressures into the Sea Palms neighborhood, and we were able to do that. And one thing you'll note is that work is going on at night. So we oftentimes plan work at night in high traffic areas, or not even just high traffic areas, if it's around schools or things like businesses that see a lot of traffic. We're going to do that at night to try to limit disruption. So they came in one night, cut the road, put in the new pipe, and then the next night, after they had plated the road back, so opened it back up to traffic before the school traffic or the business traffic got started, they came back the next night and paved it. So that was a very successful project. One of the best compliments we can get is they did not know it was going on, so that's always a win. Here are some photos of our very close to completion Canal Road water production facility. I've got my fingers crossed this will be online before the end of June. Talked to the contractor today. It seems like we're making some progress. But when you go by a water production facility, you're going to see three things really at that water production facility if you're paying close attention. You're going to see a building, and in that building is what we have here on the left. There's a lot of things, but the main thing you're going to see are two large pumps called high service pumps. And those high service pumps are what distribute water into the pipes that go to your house. And so they pull water out of this tank. You'll see a tank, a ground storage tank at every water production facility. And that is where water is held prior to pumping in the distribution system. The water comes in the top, and there are trays in there that kind of turn the water over, and that introduces oxygen to the water column. And then that strips out gases that may be entrained in there. And then it goes in this tank, and then we pull it out and pump it into the system. The other thing you will see, they're oftentimes blocked by either the ground storage tank or the building there. There is actually a well, and I've got a picture of what one of those partially looks like on our next slide. But this is actually, we call it the Canal Road well because that was the name of it when it was the existing well was put in, but it's actually on Harry Driggers, very near where they're doing all of the new intersections improvements out there at Glencoe Parkway and Harry Driggers. So again, one thing you may have seen when you drive out there, this project is very visible with all the traffic out there. One of our commissioners, Commissioner Wayne Neal, likes to say he can tell how much water is in the tank because there is a white scale on the side of that with a red arrow that moves up and down, and that will tell you how many feet of water are in that tank. And it is surprisingly accurate for something that's a very static type monitoring, but is very effective. We have electronic monitoring, and we get even more accurate data, but if you ever want to know how much water is in the tank, just look at that scale. So I talked about the wells. This is what's going on currently at exit 29. Across the street from Satilla Marsh Elementary, we've kicked out a major SPLOST project to do the same thing we're doing at the Canal Road well, take an existing well, convert it to a water production facility. So this is what a well looks like, minus one thing. This is a well pump, but there's supposed to be a motor up here, but the motor has been taken off. But this is a well pump that is being pulled as part of this project. They're going to rehab that well motor and well pump. And so this is a contractor doing this, and with the amount of hydrostatic pressure, water will come out when that happens, particularly if there's a situation where other large water users may be shut down. Georgia Pacific does shutdowns a couple of times a year, and they're a major water user in Glynn County, and that'll actually increase that so the flow rate comes out even more. But they put a blind flange on that, so it's capped off now. It's no longer leaking. But they're going to build a building and a ground storage tank right here behind all this silt fence, and then that'll improve water availability in the exit 29 area. On the sewer side, Academy Creek is a wastewater plant on the mainland. We're doing some RAS and UV upgrades, which we'll go over some of that in a minute and explain what those do. We built a new pump station up Highway 17 North that was generated as a portion of the Highway 17 widening project that GUDOT is doing. And then Basin 4002 is in downtown Brunswick. We're rehabbing pipes in what's known as a CIPP, or cured in place piping rehab technology. So this is the RAS and UV upgrades at Academy Creek. RAS is recycle or return activated sludge. So a wastewater plant is essentially a giant digestive system. And like your digestive system, it does better when you feed it consistent amounts of food rather than going long periods without eating or putting too much food. So like consistent food. So we take sludge, which is solids that settle out in the process, and we return or recycle that through the process so we have consistent amounts of food for the biological process to consume. And so those pumps are what do that. The sludge goes through, then it pumps it back through. So that's that green pump there you will see. That's a very exciting project for plant staff, and we've got 4 of those 10 pumps started up already. So we're moving around right along. The RAS pump should be online by the end of August. And we're also installing a UV or ultraviolet disinfection system. Currently at the mainland Academy Creek facility, we use gaseous chlorine to disinfect bacteria that are remaining in the water, and then we have to add sulfur dioxide to neutralize the chlorine before discharge. And so we're putting in a UV system. We have UV at Dunbar and Southport, so we were able to put in a UV system at Academy Creek, and we got a $2.09 million grant through the state to help us put that UV system in. This is some pictures of the new pump station. This is a little bit dated because I got these pictures pulled last week, and I went by today and there's apparently fencing going up all of a sudden. So Highway 17 north at the Golden Shores Mobile Home Park, there's a new pump station that's going in. This is a new pump station design that we designed in-house. Some of these new pump stations we're taking that engineering load on in-house. Great job by our team doing that. And so you'll see a couple of things here. There's a giant circular concrete thing and there's a smaller concrete. This smaller concrete is about 30 foot in the ground. That is a wet well. And that wet well is where sewer will collect from your home going through gravity lines. And then when there's enough sewer in that to merit pumping it, it will automatically kick pumps on through our control system, which you see here. It pumps out of this wet well through this valves and piping and then goes back into the ground and goes out in what's called a force main. And so that will allow flow to be handled rather than pumping continuously. You'd have to put in much smaller pumps and potentially run out of flow. We collect it and then pump as needed. But one thing you'll note, if you'll look at these right here, you have gauges and switches here, and there are 3 of them. There's only 2 pumps at this station, but one of the things we've started doing due to the lack of availability or the lead time associated with new electrical equipment and the cost to rebuild panels, we've started installing the electrical side where we can go to 3 pumps instead of 2 with very minimal additional investment. And so that's what we're taking on now. So if you go to any one of our stations, there'll actually be 3 switches there, but although the vast majority of them only have 2 pumps in the station. This is an example of that CCTV inspection that I talked about earlier, that 177 miles we did. This is one of those pipes that we inspected. This is in downtown Brunswick, and this is a vitrified clay pipe put in approximately in the mid-1960s. And you can see this hole right here. That is not what we want to see, because obviously as the water table rises and during the rainy season, that hole will then start pouring water in, and that's how we get that I&I I was talking about earlier. But trying to dig up the street to rehab this is both a slow process and a very expensive process. So we've started utilizing over the last 5 years, and we've done some previously, but we've really done a lot in the last 5 years, a process known as cured in place piping. And this is the final result of a cured in place piping rehab. Essentially, they put a bag or a sock, whatever the terminology you prefer, into the line. It has fiberglass resin all over the bag. And then we pull that well. The contractor pulls that through the pipe manhole to manhole. Then they're going to fill it with boiling water. It pushes against the inside of the pipe, so it uses the existing pipe for shape. But then we have a fully structural, brand new pipe inside the old pipe. And this picture here is the exact location that this hole was prior to rehab. So this eliminates I&I, rehabs the system, and also hopefully prevents there from being sinkholes at a later date. On the water side, we've got some upcoming projects I'd like to talk about. No photos necessarily here. But at exit 29 and at exit 42, we're going to build what are known as ESTs, or elevated storage tanks, what you may know as a water tower. At exit 29, we're going to build a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank very near where the new well site is going in at exit 29. And at exit 42, near the new warehouses, we're building a 750,000 gallon elevated storage tank up there. And why is that bigger? Well, warehouses have slightly higher fire protection needs than some residential structures. So we're putting a little extra up there because that helps provide water in the air during fire protection scenarios. And then FEMA, after a very long process, we went through following Hurricanes Matthew and Irma. We applied for funding to get some new generators, and we were able to secure funding through FEMA. Right after COVID, we tried to order generators, and they had very long lead times to get generators delivered. So we now have 8 new generators on site, and now we need to get them installed. So we've got a contract. We kicked off this project yesterday, so they can go install those 8 new generators. 5 of them will be at well facilities, and 3 of them will be at the Academy Creek plant on the mainland. There we go. On the sewer side, 3 major projects that hopefully will be kicking off this next calendar year. or this next fiscal year rather. North Mainland WPCF Engineering, with all the growth that's coming at the Exit 42 and Highway 99 area, we are looking to begin engineering to construct a new wastewater treatment plant at Exit 42. Now, this has nothing to do with Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is ready to go. They can open July 1st as far as JWSC has signed off on, but not with Buc-ee's, but it's the 6,000 new houses they're planning to build out in that region. And so by the time you actually upsized all of the piping and pumps necessary to get all of that flow back to the Academy Creek plant where it currently goes, it's cheaper actually to build a new wastewater plant. So we're going to do that. Hopefully that'll be about a 4-year project once it gets kicked off, so that one will be with us for a while. 3103 and 4119 are two separate pump stations. 3103 is in the Royal Oak subdivision. That is where all of the flow from the port comes into. That station's got some wear and tear, needs some upgrades, and so we're about to rehab that pump station. And the force main that the flow is pumped into from the sewer side, that is going to be upsized as well. Love to see the port with the growth that they're using at this point, but with that comes necessary upgrades on our side. And then 4119 is at the intersection of Highway 99 and Golden Isles Parkway, right down to the left. And all of those new homes, they pay capital fees to connect those new homes, and we need to upsize the pump station as a result. So we're going to do the same thing out there. We have our Board of Commissioners has done a great job in prioritizing investing in areas that previously were not invested in our community. And so we have two very near completion projects for neighborhood extensions. That's the Arco area and Brunswick Villa. We've got some photos of those that we'll go over in a minute. Community Road is another area. The commercial district between Habersham and Altama along Community Road does not have access to sewer. So we've awarded a contract to begin installing low pressure sewer mains, or pressure sewer mains to use the correct terminology, in there. So those businesses, should they choose, can hook up to that pressure sewer and get off of septic tanks. Then the Whitlock area, the area along Whitlock in between all the railroad tracks got skipped. And we have a lot of citizens out there that have failing wells, and so we're going to run water lines and hopefully sewer lines out there in the very near future. But the two that we're almost finished with, Arco, we had two different types of installation of sewer. Sometimes we go down the middle of the streets because it makes sense, and that's what you see here. Contractors installing sewer, digging, excavating to install sewer in the streets, but also Arco had a lot of historic unopened right-of-ways in the back alleys of people's homes, and so we put some of these sewers in those back alleyways. And that's actually very cost-effective for us, not just because we don't have to pay for asphalt, but because it allows customers to tie on at a much more effective price point, because that's where their septic tanks already drain to, so hooking them up back there requires less piping. But speaking of hooking them up, we now have a grant program that we were awarded from the Georgia EPD, the 319 grant program. There is an advertisement on our website now to elicit bids from plumbers and contractors to assist with that program. And once we get a contractor selected, we're going to hold a town meeting, and the goal of this funding, until we've run out of funding to do it, is to allow customers to tie onto that new sewer system with zero out-of-pocket cost to them until we run out of money. So the grant program will install the piping from your existing sewer lateral to the sewer main, and also demo your existing septic tank so you can get your backyard back. The only thing you'll be responsible for, and we will finance the connection fee for you, and that will be financed, I believe it works out to $12 to $15 a month on your bill. So that way there's no out-of-pocket for these customers to get tied on. Again, that will be first come, first served till we run out of money. Hopefully we can get everybody tied on, but no guarantees until we get pricing back. Brunswick Villa, right across the street from Arco, the area along Townsend, right there between Whitlock and Altama, is another area that had access to water but not sewer. So we are very nearing completion on a sewer project out there. On the left, you may see these things sitting on site. You don't know what they are. Those are trench boxes. Trench boxes are a safety device. You install them when you're down inside a trench that has been dug for the installation of pipe to prevent the walls from caving in while a contractor or employee is down in that hole. And so we installed most of these, almost all of these were in the middle of the street because there are no unopened alleyways in the Brunswick Villa area and very small backyards, so it was not going to be a good spot for us to put in sewer mains. And you can see here, this photo was pulled last week, so there's more work that has been done. They've been installing road base in that area, so that we could begin having a contractor pave that. Contractor is supposed to mobilize equipment beginning tomorrow for paving with the hope to start laying asphalt on Monday on that project. And now let's talk about our budget for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st. Our overall budget is $39.84 million for all of the services we provide. If you want to some quick back of the napkin math, can tell you about a third of our money goes to employee costs, not just wages, but of course employee salaries, benefits, all the insurance and things that go along with that. About a third goes to employee cost, about a third goes to general day-to-day operating costs, whether it's chemicals or equipment or things like that that we need to buy. And the other third goes to projects, either through the form of debt service when we have to borrow money to do large projects, or through the annual transfer, which this year is going to be $10.3 million. That is going to be our project fund heading into next year. And so that number has went up in the last 5 to 6 years from about $4 million annually to over $10 million, and that enables us to do a lot more investment in our community. So where did we see some expenses? If you wind up our fiscal year 25 budget and our fiscal year 26 budget and you sorted it by whether the highest change in expense, these three jump at the top. Increased project costs. We are seeing increased project costs, so we did increase that capital transfer to do those projects. Vehicles increased, and banking and investment fees increased. Both of these increased for essentially the same reason. Last year, we did not buy any vehicles, so the fact that we need to change some of our fleet out because some of our vehicles will get 25,000 miles a year put on them. So the fact that we need to buy a few vehicles, that is a significant change in our budget from year to year for a single line item. And then banking and investment fees. Last year, we changed our banking partners, and part of the deal that they offered for us to change our banking partner was they waived all their fees for the first year. Well, while we love our banking partners, they do not want to do their job for free for another year, so they are going to charge their fees as appropriate this year. So that is a increase in that line item. Where did we see decrease? I talked about we have debt that we issue to do large projects. Well, like your mortgage or your car payment, the more you pay down on your debt, the less interest you pay every year. Same thing happens here, so the interest went way down. We also eliminated a capital lease line item. We took some funds from the FY24 budget and paid off a lease to own agreement we had for some of those VATCons. We had purchased 4 VATCons that do that sewer cleaning. Those are $500,000 pieces of equipment, so rather than having to come up with a single $500,000 line item, we leased those for a 5-year program. We took some money, paid that lease off early, and so that line item has been eliminated. And then with a UV system going in at Academy Creek, we saw a decrease, obviously, in the chlorine and sulfur dioxide costs because we won't need those anymore, hopefully by the end of August. On the customer service side, a couple of exciting things to tell you about. The EPA has required all utilities that serve more than 1,000 customers to do a water service line inventory. And then we also have the My Usage portal. The water service line inventory, if you go to that link, you can check what materials the JWSC side and customer side of the meter, what our records indicate your material type is. You should have got a letter last November that indicated whether your service line was known, not lead, or unknown, and those were the 2 categories that we utilized because the purpose of the new water service line inventory was to identify lead service lines. We have no records of any lead service lines being in our system, but a lot of the services we have are listed as unknown because we do not have records of what those service types are. Now, our water distribution crew has been taking care of this system for over 20 years. We have an employee that's been here 40 years. Neither one of them have ever seen a lead service line in our system, but we do have to go check. So if you'll go to that link, I'll show you some pictures in a minute what you can see. But when you got that letter in the mail, if you were an unknown, you got the letter indicating that your material type was unknown, and attached to that was a survey that if you knew what material your service line was, you could send that back to us, and then you would be entered into a drawing for a $500 bill credit. For every $500 that we get back, we're giving away a $500 bill credit, and I'm happy to announce that we've given away 3 $500 bill credits since November. Now, if you are selected for the survey drawing, we will come out and confirm you did not just pencil whip the data that you sent us, but we're going to come confirm. But ultimately, that helps us out, and we'll go through that process. If you've had a leak and you've had to replace your line and you knew you do it last year and you know they put in a PVC line, send that back to us, have a chance to win $500 on your bill. But if you go to that water service line inventory webpage, you'll you'll find a map there that you can click on you can go to any address that is served by the Joint Water and Sewer Commission, and there will be 2 squares there. There's pink squares you see here. One of those is what the material type of the customer side of the meter is, and one of them is what the material type from the water main to your meter is. This is a church out on St. Simon's Island that was built after 1990. There was no lead allowed by the building code, plumbing code after 1986. So anything after 1990, we automatically were allowed to assume through the EPA that they were non-lead. So this one was built after that, so that was non-lead on both sides. But if you want to go check and see, you can do that. If you've lost the survey or you never read the survey that we sent you, you can still take part in that, because by the same web page, you can actually go to that and fill out the survey digitally if you happen to know that information, and we would love for you to do that. The other thing we have is the new My Usage portal. I talked about that we changed out all of our meters in the last 5 years, and with those new meters, we have a lot more information about how you use water. Well, what we want to do is put that information into your hands so you have more information about how you're using water and perhaps how you can use less water and reduce your monthly bill. So you can now get access to that water meter data down to every hour that you have used water. You can also set email or text alerts for usage thresholds. If you don't want to use any more than 100 gallons of water a day and you want to know when you hit that 100-gallon mark, we can send you a text message if you sign up for that. And you have to set those thresholds yourself through the system, but we can get that taken care of. So here's what the type data you might be able to get access to. This is an hourly data reading at our office at 1703 Gloucester. And you can kind of see here, looks like the first employee got there sometime right before 6 o'clock, used a little bit of water. A few more employees at 6 and 7, and then throughout the day as customers come in, utilize water. That goes up, and then at the end of the day, it looks like everybody was out of the office, or no one was using water at the office after 6 o'clock. And then you see a bunch of zeros here. Zeros are good. That means that there was no leak on that building at the time. So if you do have a leak on your house, you may see all night long, even when you're in bed, that you're using, often what we see is about 4 to 8 gallons of water an hour. And that is a likely example that you have a toilet flapper that is not seating properly. And that can actually increase your water bill $50 a month if it continues. So that's an easy way for you to potentially reduce your water bill if you get this data and see that happening. Or you might not understand that your irrigation system that you're not trying to run is coming on at 1 a.m. and you don't realize it. And we were 1 o'clock in the morning and had no idea they were using water. They got on this system, they figured it out, and now their bill has been drastically reduced. Here's examples of those alerts. And what we're showing here, these are if you were out of town and you wanted to know if anybody was using water at your house because either a leak has sprung up while you were on vacation, or while you're on vacation, your neighbor decided to help themselves to your outdoor faucet. You can get that information sent to you. So here we set the threshold at 0.1 gallons. So we sent a note here that there was 72 gallons of water and there were supposed to be none being used at that site. So there was an email sent out and there was a text message because we signed up for both of them. Now, one caveat, we do not have control of when these messages go out, so sometimes you may get a message very late at night or very early in the morning, but you will at least get the messages to let you know that you've exceeded that threshold. And there's larger copies of this printed in the room with us here at the casino, but we have some planned projects throughout the year. Just want to let you know where we may be working at. So on the left there, you will see blue stars at every place we are likely to be seen doing major projects throughout Glynn County in the next 12 months. And you can see there's projects down at exit 29, projects on St. Simon's Island, projects in downtown Brunswick, and projects out at exit 42 and even out towards the Sterling area. So we're all throughout Glynn County. On the sewer side, you'll see these green stars. We've got, again, projects at exit 29, St. Simon's Island, all throughout the city, and a few even out here at the exit 42 area. So you will see our crews out and about. These are capital projects. That does not include the ongoing maintenance that we do with our crews. So these will be likely projects we're going to hire contractors to do. So be on the lookout for those projects going on. We'd love to keep you informed on those things. And with that, there's my contact information, my office number there, and my email. Now, I will give you a heads up. If you call my office, I am not going to answer. My administrative coordinator will answer that phone, and she will get that message to me because I am not in my office very often. But if you email me or call me, I will do my best to get back with you within a reasonable time period. But with that, I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance last night and tonight, and I will open it up for any questions we may have.
question online related to water-serving German village.
Water-serving German village. Right now, there is not water available. There is water across Lawrence Road on the other side. There are some private projects that are in the planning stages that are potentially going to bring that water under German Village, but right now there are no plans from the JWSC to bring water into that, but with the private plans that are coming in, water will be closer to you in the very near future. Any other questions in the room or online? Seeing none, well, we'll be here for a few more minutes if somebody does come by and has questions, but with that, we will close the presentation portion of our meeting this year. We thank you for your attendance, and we will do it again around this time next year, so join us next year as well. Thank you.